Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be taking us on tape measure for sewing. A measuring tape is one of the most useful sewing tools and is indispensable, that is very important and essential in any sewing room. But before I dive into the topic, if you're new to my channel, please do well to press the subscribe button if you have not subscribed, so you get notified of all my videos each time I upload. In today's world, a tape measure on the tailor's neck is the same iconic professional attribute as a doctor's stethoscope. So therefore, a tailor's measuring tape is as important as a doctor's stethoscope. So, in this tape measure guide, we'll focus on the following topics, which are tape measure for sewing definition, uses of tape measure in sewing, how to read a sewing tape measure, how to buy a measuring tape for sewing, tape measure for sewing types, and vintage measuring tapes. Looking at this outline under tape measurement, this is to show us that tape measurement is very important. By so, we'll be taking some of the topics in this video. In our subsequent video, we'll take the rest of the topics. What is a tape measure for sewing? The tape measure or a measuring tape for sewing is a soft and flexible strip or ribbon with linear measurement markings. It can also be seen as a flexible tool used for measuring length. And the most common length of a measuring tape is 60 inches by 152 centimeters. But there are other tapes that ranges from 100 inches by 254 centimeters long, or even longer, 120 inch by 304 centimeters, which can be useful for measuring longer lengths like curtains, quilts, and other home decor items. Having gone through a definition of a tape measure, we're moving into vintage and antique measuring tapes. What are vintage and antique measuring tape? It simply implies those measuring tapes that were used those days and the history behind the measuring tape. There are many sewing tools that have 1,000-year-old history, of which our measuring tape is not left out. Let's take a quick look at some facts about a tailor's measuring tape. Our fabric tape measure was invented in the year 1847 by Alexis Lavin, the master tailor of the French Empress. Alexis Lavin invented our fabric tape measure in the year 1847, and he was the master tailor of the French Empress as of then, of which Maria Eugenia was the founder of the first fashion school Esmond, which exists till date. And since then, an elegant, beautifully packed measuring tape turned into a symbol of the profession of a fashion designer and a tailor. The vintage measuring tapes were made from fabric, usually silk, and had ink marks which were printed on them manually. So the vintage measuring tapes were made out of fabric, usually silk, and had ink marks which were printed on them manually. Let's take a quick look at some images of vintage measuring tapes. So let's take a quick look at them. Let's see how our vintage measuring tapes look. This is one of the vintage measuring tape of then. This is it. These are the vintage measuring tapes. This is what they look like. These are the vintage measuring tapes. These are what they look like then. This is the, so these are all the vintage measuring tapes. These were what they look like then. We'll be looking at the uses of tape measure in sewing. The primary use of tape measure is to take body measurements. Yes. A tape measure is used primarily for taking body measurements. We have other uses of tape measure, which are for drafting patterns, measuring fabric, laying out patterns on fabric, specifying the length of a garment, checking the size of hems, measuring curves and corners, and also measuring buttons, quilts, and much more. We've come to the end of today's video.